I'd like to say a few words on a topic to do with cymatics, and I'd like to call this talk People Are Cymatic. And I'd like to talk about how people are created and formed in the physical realm, so-called physical, by invisible energy fields and force fields and polarities that give the effect of cymatics. And if you go on the internet, you can type in cymatics and you will see videos of some people doing experiments with a speaker unit which has, voice coils and speaker unit surfaces and casing and such, and they have a board or a surface above the vibration coming from the unit. And what they do is they sprinkle dust all over the surface, and they start putting tones through the speaker unit. And what it does is it vibrates all the grain on the surface, and I think they use sand or salt or some small particles. And basically what happens is you can clearly see it creates these beautiful geometric forms and patterns, and it seems, at least from what I can see, the higher the frequency, the more complex the pattern. So when people talk about raising frequencies of awareness and consciousness and all this kind of thing, you can see what they kind of mean by that. And what I'd like to do is talk about how people are cymatic. Now, what could I possibly mean by that? Because we can see illustrated quite clearly here that, sound, form are clearly linked. Vibration creates form. And if we think of sound, what is sound? Is there such thing as sound? I mean, of course, in our reality, we decode sound. So to us, sound is real, and I would agree. Because you're listening to me now, for example. But the base reality, without our awareness inside it, or as part of it, the base reality doesn't have sound. It has vibration. And it's these vibrational waveforms that go into our ears and land on the eardrum, which vibrate the eardrum, and it gets converted into electrical signals. And the brain hears the sound. The sound is kind of illusory, a bit like the solidity of nature, because everything is atoms, and atoms are mostly empty space. And it's quite common knowledge, this understanding of atoms, but yet people don't dwell on it enough. They don't think about it enough. They don't finish thinking about it and then step into a position of knowing about it. It's just something they know of. They don't really know anything about it. They don't really try and piece together how what they can see and what they can feel and what they can do in their life is all connected to atoms. So how are people cymatic? Well, if we look at a galaxy, you have billions of stars and billions of bits of rock and planets and all sorts of stuff going on. And what's in the middle is a giant energy source, like a giant capacitor in an electrical universe. And you could look at the galaxy a bit like the surface used in cymatics, and all the small grains and bits of sand are all the bits in the galaxy. And the thing in the middle of the galaxy you could consider as the speaker unit, creating the vibration. And that is on a big scale. One of the things that needs to be carefully understood with cymatics is the experiment that we can see is only done on a 2D plane. It's done on a flat surface. What I would suggest thinking about and visualizing in your mind is that the geometric pattern that appears in the two-dimensional plane on the board is a representation of a three-dimensional field of vibration. Now, if you can imagine the star, the sun in the sky, with a field coming out of it, it is all around it. It's not a 2D flat plane of it, it's all around it, like a bubble. And within that, within that experiment on the 2D plane, you can see a geometric pattern, which is a cross section. If you could, if you imagine like an apple, and you slice an apple in half, and you look in the inside of where you've sliced it, and you can see a flat 2D plane, and you can see the geometric expression of the whole in that flat 2D plane. That you have to keep in mind. It's very important to understand that the cymatic experiment, it shows geometric form, but it doesn't quite show you that it's three-dimensional. So bear that in mind. So if we look at a star, we can see that the center of the star is the speaker unit. It's the thing creating the vibration, and it's getting its energy, like a giant capacitor, from the electrical universe around it. And you could consider the so-called surface of the sun, and I would argue that there isn't really a surface to it. It's plasma. You can see that the surface of the sun is like the surface that they use in the cymatic video, and you can see how the detail of on the surface is the grain on the surface. Now if we look at another concept, the planet Earth, we can see how the center of the Earth is the vibrational pulse from the speaker unit, and we can see how the surface of the Earth is like the surface used in the experiment, and how the things walking around on the surface of the Earth are like the grains of sand. And it's these vibrations coming from the unit, the speaker, the source, the vibrational source, that form the geometric patterns in the experiment in cymatics. So you can transfer the exact same notion to the reason why people have different faces, different colour skin, different shaped bodies, different textures, different details, different things that make them unique. And every single one of us, you are all unique. You are 100% unique. Because when we think of cymatics doing this to grains of sand and creating geometric form, and then we think of all of these so-called speaker units flying around in so-called space around us, like planets and moons and stars and the galaxy itself and everything in it, and then all of the other galaxies around us, because stars aren't just above your head, they're all around us. People forget that. But if we look at the concept of people being formed through cymatical vibrations by all of the vibrational sources, which are the planets and the stars and the moons and everything that we can see, or everything that we can detect or that we know of in the known universe, the visible light spectrum. And it's the unseen world that fundamentally controls the world that we do see, as a wise man once said. And it's so profound how true that is, and all you need to do to check it within this reality is play with some magnets. Because when you play with magnets, you can see, or not, how clearly magnets are influencing each other and other objects with invisible forces. Now, if you imagine in your mind, I'll try and build a picture for you in your mind, a visual. Imagine in your mind a void like a void of space, but without any kind of properties to it. And now you introduce properties of polarity into the environment. So you have kind of like magnetic forces, and in a simple way, kind of think how like in movies they show craft docking into other craft with magnetic fields and tractor beams and stuff like that. Well, imagine kind of being surrounded by a bunch of magnetic fields, just to keep it simple. Now imagine doubling the amount of magnetic force, or the amount of crushing force. What do you think would happen to you? Well, you'd probably shrink. So if you reverse that and you remove half of the crushing pressure, you'll probably grow, or you will grow. Now, when we look at people being born onto this planet, into this reality, you have to visualize in your mind the solar system with the Earth flying around the sun, and just keep things simple, try not to complicate things too much in the visual. You're on the Earth flying around the sun and you've been born. Right at that very moment, from the moment you were conceived to the 9 months later when you were born, the entire solar system and galaxy and universe around you was cymatically forming you into the shape, the colour, the smell, everything. It shapes everything. When we are born, all of the planets and the moons and the stars are in a certain position around us. Now, knowing that all of these vibrational sources are effectively landing on us, if they can land on anything rather than in us. But once you know that all these vibrations are landing on you from all different directions at the same time when you're born, that means that there is a fundamental creation right there at that very moment from when you're conceived to when you're born. And you are, because of everything being in the position it was when you were born and conceived, these positions make you who you are. They make you the way you look. They make you the way you feel. They form the freckles on your skin. They form the shape of your toenails. These vibrations form your fingerprint. You are absolutely 100% unique. You want to know where the fingerprints and stuff comes from? It comes from the same place as all the rest of it. Because people are cymatic. Now, just a thought exercise. Imagine the solar system, however you see the solar system. Now, as far as I can tell, we have the Sun, and then we have Mercury, and then Venus, and then the Earth with its moon, which is particularly odd, which is why I'm going to mention that moon. Then we have Mars, and then the asteroid belt, and then Jupiter, and then Saturn, and then the rest of the gas giants outside that. But to the visible eye, the solar system goes out to Saturn. After that you need telescopes, as far as I'm aware. So imagine the solar system in a very simple form. Now, although the solar system itself is moving and the rotation of the planets is actually causing a vortex trail, like a giant comet, of the entire solar system, it's not a flat 2D disk that spins, you know, in a flat way, like a dinner plate. The dinner plate is flying through the void, and because everything on the dinner plate is spinning, it's leaving a trail behind it of coils. If you imagine putting in to that solar system 2 extra Jupiters, so now you have 3 Jupiters, imagine how that is going to affect the cymatic field for organisms living on the surface of the Earth. Now remember when I spoke about imagining a void environment and having polarities and crushing forces that kind of you can magnify and decrease to, you know, expand or squash yourself? Same principle. Carry it over, connect the dots. Now try and remove all 3 Jupiters. So now you just have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and then Saturn. Now remove Saturn as well. How do you think that's going to form geometric patterns on the Earth, with the cymatic vibrational fields that are making all the geometric patterns? Now, I would probably, I'm under the impression that universal things like the Fibonacci sequence, I think possibly those kinds of things would remain, although that the geometrics would change, because the underlying tone of the geometrics seems to remain universally. So it's going to change the physical appearance of things like organisms on planets for sure, because all these forces that are crushing and squashing and doing the opposite, they all have these effects on people's growth. And I would suggest that it is the planets, the stars, the moons, everything going on around us that gives us, black people, white people, Asian people, South American people, people that live up the north of the planet like the Eskimos. They do have influence from the environment, and if you look at people like Eskimos, you can see how they have slightly different noses and faces and things because of their immediate environment. But then again, you can visualize the localities and the local resolutions and scales of all these different things and forces and invisible things going on that are forming all these different things. So it's all working together. It's all one holistic system of invisible cymatics at all different levels and different types and different scales, and it forms people into the way they are. So because of the planets and the stars being in the positions and all this that they are, I would suggest we have humanoids because of all that stuff, and obviously the way that things are coded in genetics and DNA and all that kind of thing. And then on a different scale, with the same kind of thing, you have the environment vibrationally changing people's form. And you can look at it as a snowy storm blowing you in the face, or blowing into your face, or you could look at it as a planet forming the general shape and construct of your body, which is floating around nearby somewhere. It's all cymatical as far as I can see, and it seems to be forgotten, because I feel that I'm not the first one to figure this stuff out. There are, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, really, when it comes to researching stuff like this, and I'm not talking about the modern world either, because it seems the ancient world, this is the kind of stuff that they knew. This is the kind of stuff that they were connected to. They were fully immersed in this kind of Gnostic type thinking. Now, when we look at things like evolution, it's called the theory of evolution because that's what it is. It's a theory. And as far as I'm aware, Darwin himself said something along the lines of, for evolution to be true, you would have to have ample evidence in the fossil record. And as far as I'm aware, this hasn't been found, and it actually has a name. It's called the missing link. And I would suggest looking at the work of Lloyd Pye for information on the missing link. So we can talk about creation methods, but there's tons of inconsistencies with these things, because if we think of the kind of mainstream narrative that seems to be forming or has formed, that we all come from ancestors which were black in colour of skin and come from Africa in the ancient story of the world. Now, as far as I can see, when two black people give birth to a child, it's black as well. And when two white people do the same thing happens. And when you go anywhere else in the world, if you have two people from the same place who are the same form, nearly, they come out with a baby that is between them. It's a mixture of them. That's what it always is. So how do you go from this ancient story of the whole world population comes from some black people in ancient Africa to having Asian people and European people and all these different races? There's so many, you just can't even begin to list them. I mean, who's European anyway? Because there's so many different countries in Europe now, and when you look within the countries, you can also see how the countries have localized versions of the same thing going on. So you'll go from entire continents of people that look a certain way compared to another continent of people, but then if you go into that continent and look at individual countries, you'll see how the different countries are slightly different within themselves, but locally they seem to have these hotspots of different flavors and different types. And if you go into one of them countries and you look at the different cities or areas, however they make their areas, you'll see the same thing going on at a more localized level. And then you'll go to lower and lower, and it's the same thing. So you can see, in the same way that you can change resolution in your mind's eye to see the different scales of the concept which I'm trying to tell you about, how everything is cymatic, and you can look at a galaxy or a planet or even a human body with the heart, where that is a vibrational source, and that is giving you a cymatic effect, creating your skin, and everything on your skin and everything within. You can look at yourself in the same way. As in, your heart is the speaker unit, same as the star, same as the planet, same as the video of the cymatics. It's the speaker unit, it's the vibrational source. And when you can see the different scales with these different things, and you can change resolution in your mind like that, and you can see how on different layers and different levels, you can see how it all links together and it's all the same pattern. You can see there's a common theme, so something has to come from that. And what is coming from that is a big question. How do you have different people around the world if we are supposed to have all originated from a single type of human on this planet, which mainstream is trying to say is ancient Africa? How do you go from dark colour skinned people to light colour, or all the ones in between, all the variations that there is? How do you go from the single couple of one colour to having other colours? Well, there's a big question mark there, clearly, and you can see how this is nothing to do with, you know, my personal beliefs of other races, because I see everybody as one race on this planet. So there's a big question mark, and as far as I can tell, the answer seems to be that people are cymatic. And I hope that I've managed to explain what I mean by people are cymatic. But if you look at everything in nature, everything is cymatic. The reason the Himalayan mountains are the way they are is because there's an invisible energy field creating that shape. If you could see it, you would see a continuation of the shape of the mountain up into the sky and down under the ground, and it would be the energy field. It would be the vibrational representation of the source, and that's what everything is. It's all cymatics, it's all the same thing. And I'm not sure if cymatics is the correct word for this, whatever this is, but it certainly gives it some detail, and I hope I've been able to enlighten you with some. So, until the next time,